the dusty archives of Blackwood Historical Society, where time seems suspended between yellowed papers and forgotten memories, Dr. Eleanor Hayes finds herself alone on a rainy Thursday evening in April 2023. The soft patter of raindrops against the windows provides a rhythmic backdrop to her methodical work. As the Society's lead archivist, Eleanor has spent countless hours digitizing their extensive photograph collection, preserving fragments of history that might otherwise crumble into oblivion. Tonight, she's working through a recently donated collection, dozens of photographs from the 1920s, found in the attic of the old Blackwood schoolhouse during its demolition. Most are standard fare: stoic family portraits, buildings long since replaced, and several class photographs from the town's primary school. But one particular photograph catches her attention. It's a class photograph dated June 12, 1920. 24 children sit in perfect rows, their expressions solemn as was customary for photographs of the era. Unlike the rigid poses common in such pictures, these children appear unusually still, almost unnaturally so, their eyes focused straight ahead, hands folded neatly in their laps. Behind them stands a slender woman, presumably their teacher, wearing a high-collared dark dress, her hair pulled tightly into a severe bun. Something about the photograph makes Eleanor pause. She slides it under the specialized scanner, and as the image appears on her computer screen, a feeling of unease settles over her. The children's faces show no hint of the fidgeting one would expect from young students. Their stillness seems more like that of wax figures than living, breathing children. Eleanor zooms in, examining their expressions more closely. Their eyes reflect no light, appearing as flat, dark pools. "That's odd," she murmurs to herself, leaning closer to the monitor. Children in these old photographs usually showed some signs of movement: a slight blur of the hands, a tilted head. The exposure times were still relatively long in 1920. She enlarges a section showing a small boy in the front row. His collar is perfectly straight, not a single wrinkle in his shirt, and his hands rest motionless on his knees. Even more striking is his gaze, utterly vacant, yet somehow penetrating. Eleanor feels as if he's looking through the camera, through time itself, directly at her. "It's like they were in some kind of trance," she whispers, scrolling to examine each child in turn. All 24 show the same unnatural stillness, the same empty gaze. Eleanor notices a small notation on the back of the photograph: Miss Abigail Blackwood's class, 1920. The name catches her attention immediately. Blackwood, the same as the town itself. She makes a mental note to research this Miss Blackwood, wondering if she might be related to the town's founding family. As Eleanor continues her examination, she notices something else. In the back row, slightly off-center, is an empty chair, or rather, what appears to be an empty chair at first glance. Zooming in further, she sees the faintest outline of what might be a child, so faded as to be nearly invisible. "How strange," she whispers, adjusting the contrast on her screen. It's almost as if someone tried to erase this child from the photograph. With enhanced digital manipulation, the outline becomes slightly more defined. The suggestion of a small figure sitting perfectly still, just like the others, yet somehow not fully present in the photograph. Eleanor feels a chill run down her spine despite the warmth of the small room. "I've never seen anything like this," she says, applying various filters to the image. "It's not a double exposure or a photographic error I'm familiar with." The more she enhances the image, the more disturbing it becomes. Unlike the vacant expressions of the other children, this ghostly figure seems to have a subtle curve to its lips, almost a smile, though too faint to be certain. She checks the time: 11:42 p.m. The Historical Society closed hours ago, and the rain has intensified, drumming against the roof with increasing urgency. She should head home, but curiosity compels her to continue. She opens the Society's database, searching for any information about Miss Abigail Blackwood and her class from 1920. The search yields sparse results. Abigail Blackwood, born 1888, served as a teacher at Blackwood Primary School from 1915 until her sudden disappearance in November 1920, just months after this photograph was taken. No further records exist, no death certificate, no indication of where she might have gone. It's as if she simply vanished without a trace. "People didn't just disappear back then," Eleanor mutters, scrolling through the limited information. "Especially not a school teacher from a prominent local family." She broadens her search to include newspaper archives from neighboring towns, hoping for any mention of the missing teacher. A single article from the Millfield Gazette dated November 28, 1920, briefly mentions the unfortunate incident at Blackwood School, and the tragic loss of so many young lives to the influenza epidemic. The article notes that the schoolteacher, Miss A. Blackwood, could not be located for comment. Even more curious, Eleanor discovers, is that the school closed temporarily following her disappearance. When it reopened in January 1921, many parents had removed their children, enrolling them instead in schools in neighboring towns despite the considerable distance. They were afraid, Eleanor realizes. But of what? Influenza doesn't usually cause people to abandon a school entirely. She finds records of town council meetings from December 1920, with vague references to securing the schoolhouse and ensuring no further incidents occur. One cryptic note mentions disposing of Miss Blackwood's equipment and personal effects as recommended. Eleanor leans back in her chair, the glow of the computer screen illuminating her puzzled expression. Why would so many families go to such lengths to avoid the local school? And what happened to Abigail Blackwood? As she ponders these questions, the lights in the archive room flicker momentarily. Eleanor glances up, momentarily startled, before returning her attention to the photograph on her screen. She freezes. For just a moment, so brief she might have imagined it, she thought she saw movement within the photograph, a slight shift in the position of the ghostly figure in the back row. "I've been staring at screens too long," she mutters, rubbing her tired eyes. "Now I'm seeing things move in century-old photographs." She refreshes the image and everything appears normal again, or as normal as this unsettling photograph can be. The ghostly figure remains faintly visible, motionless like the others, though Eleanor can't shake the feeling that its position has changed slightly. Eleanor decides it's time to go home. She saves her work, carefully returns the original photograph to its protective sleeve, and gathers her belongings. As she reaches for her coat, her phone buzzes with a notification. An email from Dr. Marcus Thompson, a colleague from the university's photography department who specializes in historical photographic techniques. "Got your message. Fascinating find. There's more to this photograph than meets the eye. Can we meet tomorrow? I've used some specialized techniques that revealed something unsettling." Eleanor hadn't sent Marcus a message about the photograph. At least she doesn't remember doing so. Perhaps she had mentioned it in passing during their last conversation. Regardless, his interest is piqued, and she replies immediately, arranging to meet him the following morning. The drive home through the rain-slicked streets of Blackwood is eerily quiet. The small town, with just over 5,000 residents, typically shuts down after dark, but tonight seems particularly deserted. As Eleanor stops at a red light, she glances at her passenger seat where her bag sits, containing a digital copy of the photograph she'd transferred to a USB drive. For a moment, she could swear she hears the faint sound of children whispering. But when she turns off the radio, there's nothing but the steady rhythm of rain against the car roof. "Get a grip, Eleanor," she tells herself firmly. It's just an old photograph, not some haunted relic. Yet, as she pulls into her driveway, she can't help but wonder why Marcus had used the word unsettling to describe what he'd found. What could he possibly have seen that she hadn't? Her small cottage, usually a welcoming sight, seems different tonight. The windows darker, the shadows deeper. Eleanor hurries inside, locking the door behind her with unusual care. She tries to dismiss her unease as she goes through her evening routine, but the image of those children with their empty eyes keeps resurfacing in her mind. In her study, Eleanor notices her computer has awakened from sleep mode, the screen glowing in the darkness. She's certain she turned it off before leaving that morning. As she approaches, she sees her email program is open, showing a sent message to Marcus Thompson with the subject line, "Unusual photographic anomaly. Your expertise needed," and the digital copy of the photograph attached. "That's impossible," she whispers, checking the timestamp. The email was sent at 7:17 p.m., when she had been working at the Historical Society without access to her home computer. Eleanor slowly backs away from the desk, a cold sensation spreading through her body. Sleep doesn't come easily that night. Eleanor dreams of rows of silent children with dark, empty eyes, and a tall, slender woman whose face remains in shadow, no matter how hard Eleanor tries to see it. In her dream, one child slowly turns to look directly at her, the faded, ghostly figure from the back row, its mouth opening as if to speak. Eleanor wakes with a start at 3:17 a.m., heart racing, the phantom whispers of children still echoing in her ears. "Teacher says you've been looking for us," a child's voice seems to say, though when Eleanor fumbles for the light switch, her bedroom is empty. The digital clock on her nightstand flickers momentarily, the numbers jumbling before settling back to 3:17. Eleanor doesn't return to sleep. Instead, she sits up in bed, laptop open, researching everything she can find about photographic anomalies from the early 20th century. There are documented cases of double exposures, light leaks, and chemical errors that created strange effects. None seem to match what she's observed in the Blackwood school photograph. Morning arrives with unexpected sunshine, the previous night's storm having moved on, leaving behind a washed clean world of glistening streets and clear blue skies. Eleanor arrives early at Rosewood Cafe, a small establishment near the university, where she's arranged to meet Marcus. She chooses a corner table, positioning herself to watch the door while keeping her laptop screen hidden from casual observers. The normalcy of the cafe, baristas calling out orders, students hunched over textbooks, the rich aroma of coffee, provides a welcome contrast to the unease that has followed her since discovering the photograph. Eleanor orders a strong black coffee, hoping the caffeine might sharpen her mind after her restless night. At exactly 9:30, Marcus Thompson enters the cafe. He's in his early 60s, with silver-streaked hair and wire-rimmed glasses that give him a scholarly appearance. Despite his age, he moves with the enthusiastic energy of someone perpetually fascinated by his field of study. He spots Eleanor immediately and makes his way to her table, a leather messenger bag slung over his shoulder. "Eleanor," he greets her warmly, setting his bag on an empty chair. "I ordered a coffee on my way in. Mind if I join you?" "Please," she gestures to the seat across from her. "Thanks for meeting me on such short notice." Marcus settles in, extracting his laptop from the messenger bag. "I'm glad you reached out about this photograph. I've been studying early 20th century photographic anomalies for years, but I've never seen anything quite like what you sent me." Eleanor frowns slightly, setting down her coffee cup. "That's just it, Marcus. I don't remember sending you anything about the photograph." He looks up, momentarily confused. "You didn't? I received an email from your account last night at 11:58 p.m. with the digital copy attached. The subject line mentioned needing my expertise on an unusual photographic anomaly." "That's impossible," Eleanor says, leaning forward. "I was still at the archives at that time, and I definitely didn't send you anything. I didn't even have the digital copy with me. It was on a USB drive in my bag." Marcus's expression shifts from confusion to concern. "Well, someone did. The email came from your university account." He pulls up the email on his screen, turning it toward Eleanor. She stares at the message, recognizing her email address but not the wording of the message, which is more formal and clinical than her usual style. "I didn't write this," she whispers. "Then who did?" Marcus asks. "I don't know. When I got home last night, my computer was on, with the email program open showing a sent message to you. But I'm certain I turned the computer off before leaving home yesterday morning." They sit in silence for a moment, the implications hanging between them. Marcus is the first to speak. "Well, however it found its way to me, I'm glad it did. Because what I discovered in this photograph," he pauses, searching for the right words, "it defies conventional explanation. You need to see what I found." He opens several files on his laptop, arranging them side by side. "I've spent most of the night analyzing this. First, I verified it wasn't digitally manipulated. The anomalies are present in the original photographic emulsion." "What anomalies exactly?" Eleanor asks. Marcus turns the laptop toward her, showing the same class photograph she'd been examining the night before. But he has enhanced it further, using techniques beyond Eleanor's expertise. "I used a method called spectral layer separation. It reveals layers within silver nitrate photographs by isolating different wavelengths of light. Essentially, it can separate the timestamps of exposure. In layman's terms, it shows if parts of a photograph were captured at slightly different moments." What Marcus shows her sends a chill through Eleanor's body. In his enhanced version, the 24 visible children remain perfectly still, but the ghostly 25th child, the one barely visible in the original, appears much more clearly, and it isn't sitting still like the others. Its head is turned, looking directly at the camera, with what appears to be a smile that's too wide, too knowing for a child's face. "That's disturbing," Eleanor says, studying the enhanced image. "It's almost as if this child was moving during the exposure, but only this one, not any of the others." "Exactly," Marcus nods. "And look at the timestamp separation." He points to color-coded areas of the image. Everything in blue was captured at the exact same moment. The areas in red were captured approximately 3.2 seconds later, based on my analysis of the silver nitrate crystallization patterns. And the red areas correspond only to this 25th child, Marcus confirms. It's as if this figure was added to the photograph after the initial exposure, but not through double exposure or manipulation, through some means I can't explain with conventional photographic science. Eleanor studies the image more closely. The face is clearer now, a boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old, but his expression is wrong. Marcus finishes for her. No child from that era would smile like that for a formal photograph. The exposure times required complete stillness and serious expressions. That's not all. Marcus continues, seemingly oblivious to Eleanor's growing discomfort. When I isolated the audio wavelengths embedded in the photograph's silver nitrate patterns. Audio wavelengths? Eleanor interrupts, setting her coffee cup down with more force than intended. That's not possible in a photograph from 1920. Ordinarily, no. Marcus agrees. But under certain conditions, silver nitrate can actually capture sound vibrations. It's extremely rare, but not unprecedented. The photographic plate can act as a crude phonographic record if the sound vibrations affect the exposure process. There are documented cases from the Edison laboratory experiments, though they were never commercially viable. And you're saying this photograph contains sound? Eleanor can't keep the skepticism from her voice. Not just sound, Marcus says, his voice dropping lower. Voices. Listen. He connects a pair of headphones to his laptop and offers them to her. After a moment's hesitation, she puts them on. At first, there's nothing but static, a faint hissing that might be attributed to background noise or digital artifacts. Then, gradually, she begins to distinguish patterns in the static, rhythmic fluctuations that coalesce into sound. She hears it, the soft, synchronized breathing of children, a rhythmic inhale and exhale, unnaturally uniform. Beneath that, barely perceptible, a woman's voice, whispering words Eleanor can't quite make out. This could be pareidolia, Eleanor says, referring to the psychological phenomenon of perceiving patterns in random stimuli. Our brains are wired to find meaning in noise. Keep listening, Marcus urges. And then, cutting through the ambient sounds, a single child's voice emerges, crystal clear and chilling in its distinctness. She's coming back for us. She always comes back. Eleanor yanks the headphones off, her hands trembling. This has to be some kind of joke, right? Audio manipulation? Digital artifacts from the scanning process? Marcus shakes his head solemnly. I ran every authentication test possible. I used 3 different algorithms to extract the audio, all yielding the same results. I even took the liberty of sending the file to Dr. Ramirez at MIT, without context, just asking for verification of the audio extraction. She confirmed my findings. He turns his laptop back toward himself, typing rapidly. There's more. When I amplified the background whispers, I was able to make out fragments of what sounds like a ritual or incantation. Listen to this enhanced section. Eleanor reluctantly puts the headphones back on. This time, the woman's voice is clearer, though still fragmented. Bind them to the photograph. Essence captured. Return to me. My son. Bring him back. Eleanor feels the coffee churning uncomfortably in her stomach. Marcus, this is impossible. Photographs don't capture audio, and they certainly don't record evidence of whatever this is suggesting. Very suspenseful music builds. Over the next several days, Eleanor and Marcus delve deeper into the mystery of the photograph and its subjects. They identify most of the children through school records. William Cooper, Elizabeth Miller, James Sullivan, and others. Names belonging to real children who attended Blackwood Primary School in 1920. Most disturbing is what they discover when researching what became of these children. Of the 24 visible students, historical records indicate that 23 died under unusual circumstances in November 1920. The same month their teacher, Abigail Blackwood, disappeared. The official record cites an outbreak of influenza, claiming the lives of nearly an entire class within a single week. But newspaper articles from neighboring towns tell a different story, with parents reporting strange behavior in their children leading up to their deaths. They spoke of children sitting motionless for hours, staring at nothing, sometimes whispering to themselves in voices that didn't sound quite like their own. The only survivor from the visible children was Catherine Wells, a girl seated in the front row of the photograph. According to census records, she moved away from Blackwood shortly after the tragedy, eventually settling in a town nearly 100 miles away. To Eleanor's surprise, further research reveals that Catherine might still be alive. If the records are accurate, she would be 109 years old, residing in a nursing home in Mapleton. We need to speak with her, Eleanor insists, already gathering her belongings. If she's still alive, she's the only one who might know what really happened. Marcus hesitates. Eleanor, she's 109 years old. Even if she's still alive, what are the chances she remembers something that happened when she was 6? Some memories never fade, Marcus, especially the traumatic ones. Car engine starting. The drive to Mapleton takes nearly 2 hours, giving Eleanor and Marcus ample time to discuss their findings. They've discovered that Abigail Blackwood was indeed related to the town's founding family, the great-niece of Thaddeus Blackwood, who established the settlement in 1842. Further research had revealed unsettling details about Thaddeus. Local legends described him as obsessed with the occult, allegedly practicing rituals aimed at achieving immortality. Most had dismissed these stories as small-town gossip, the kind of rumors that often surrounded wealthy, eccentric founders. But Eleanor isn't so sure anymore. Sunset Meadows Nursing Home is a surprisingly pleasant facility, with bright hallways and the gentle hum of activity. After explaining their research to the administrators and undergoing a brief screening to ensure their visit won't distress their elderly resident, Eleanor and Marcus are led to a sunlit room at the end of a quiet corridor. Catherine Wells sits in a wheelchair near the window, her thin frame draped in a soft blue cardigan despite the warmth of the day. Her white hair is arranged neatly, and though her body shows the inevitable effects of her remarkable age, her pale blue eyes remain clear and alert as she watches them enter. "Ms. Wells," the nurse says gently, "these are the researchers I mentioned. They'd like to ask you about Blackwood." At the mention of the town's name, Catherine's expression changes subtly, a tightening around her eyes, a slight tremble in her hands that now grip the arms of her wheelchair. "I told your colleague everything already," she says, her voice surprisingly strong despite its age-related rasp. "Yesterday, when she visited." Eleanor and Marcus exchange confused glances. "I'm sorry, Ms. Wells, but we haven't sent anyone ahead of us," Eleanor explains carefully. Catherine frowns, leaning forward slightly. A young woman, dark hair pulled back, high-collared black dress, rather severe-looking. She asked about Miss Blackwood in the photograph. Eleanor feels her blood run cold. The description matches the teacher in the photograph, a woman who, if she had somehow survived, would be well over 130 years old. "What did you tell her?" Marcus asks, his voice carefully neutral. "Nothing," Catherine replies, a hint of defiance in her tone. "I pretended I couldn't remember. I've spent a century pretending I couldn't remember." She looks directly at Eleanor. "But you have the photograph, don't you? You've seen what's hidden in it." Wordlessly, Eleanor removes a printed copy from her bag, placing it on the small table beside Catherine. The elderly woman doesn't look at it, keeping her gaze fixed on Eleanor instead. "The 25th child," Catherine whispers. "The one you can barely see. Did you find him?" "We enhanced the image," Eleanor confirms. "Can you tell us who he was?" Catherine closes her eyes briefly, as if gathering strength. "His name was Henry Blackwood, Abigail's son. He died 3 months before that photograph was taken." The revelation lands like a physical blow. Eleanor struggles to process its implications. "But if he was already dead, he's in the photograph because she brought him back," Catherine continues, her voice dropping to a whisper. "But not just him. She brought all of them back in a way. She found something, a ritual in old Thaddeus Blackwood's books. She told us it was a game, a special kind of photograph where we had to sit perfectly still and think about Henry, her dear boy who had gone to heaven." Catherine's gnarled hands tremble more violently now. "We didn't understand what she was doing, not until later when we started feeling different, like we weren't alone in our bodies anymore, like Henry was inside us, pieces of him in each of us." And she kept taking more photographs every day, saying she just needed a little more of each of us to make him whole again. Tense music intensifies. "How did you survive?" Marcus asks gently. A bitter smile crosses Catherine's face. "My mother was superstitious. She made me wear this." She pulls a chain from beneath her cardigan, revealing an antique silver pendant, an old family heirloom supposedly blessed by a priest in the old country. "She said it would protect me from evil. I never took it off, not even during Miss Blackwood's special photography sessions." Eleanor leans forward, her professional curiosity momentarily overriding her unease. "And the others?" "The official record says they died of influenza." "Influenza doesn't make children waste away to nothing while remaining conscious. Influenza doesn't make them speak in a voice not their own." Catherine's eyes fill with tears. They weren't themselves anymore at the end. They were just vessels. And when she had taken enough from them, they simply stopped, like dolls whose clockwork had wound down. "And Abigail Blackwood?" Marcus prompts. "What happened to her?" Catherine's expression darkens. The parents realized something was wrong. Some tried to remove their children from her class, but by then it was too late. When the children began dying, the town finally acted. A group of men went to her house one night. My father was among them. She pauses, seeming to struggle with the memory. They didn't find her, but they found her dark room. That's what she called it. Not for developing photographs, but for developing something else. What did they find? Eleanor asks, though part of her doesn't want to know the answer. A child, Catherine whispers, made from parts that weren't physical, from memories and thoughts and whatever essence she had stolen from her students through those photographs. It looked like Henry, but wrong. Incomplete. They destroyed it, burned the house with everything inside. Eleanor's mind races, struggling to reconcile Catherine's story with any rational explanation. But the photograph we found was likely one she kept elsewhere. Catherine interrupts. She took dozens, perhaps hundreds. She was trying to perfect her technique. The elderly woman finally turns to look at the photograph on the table beside her. You need to destroy it. All copies, digital and physical. Why? Marcus asks. Because she's still trying to complete her work, Catherine says simply. And now she knows you have it. Soft whispers fade in. As if on cue, Eleanor's phone buzzes with an incoming email notification. She glances at it reflexively, then freezes. It's from her own email address, sent just seconds ago, with a single line of text. Thank you for finding my class photograph. I'll be collecting it soon. A.B. Sharp, discordant music sting. As if on cue, Eleanor's phone buzzes with an incoming email notification. She glances at it reflexively, then freezes. It's from her own email address, sent just seconds ago, with a single line of text. Thank you for finding my class photograph. I'll be collecting it soon. A.B. She shows the screen to Marcus, whose face pales visibly. We need to leave, he says, rising quickly. Now. Catherine reaches out suddenly, her frail hand gripping Eleanor's wrist with surprising strength. Destroy it, she insists, her eyes wide with fear, before she completes what she started a century ago. How? Eleanor asks. If she can send emails from my account and visit you here, how can we possibly stop her? Fire, Catherine whispers. It was fire that destroyed her work before. Every copy, every negative, every digital file, all of it must burn. As they leave Catherine's room, Eleanor notices the elderly woman clutching her silver pendant tightly, lips moving in what appears to be a silent prayer. The nurse at the station gives them a curious look as they hurry past. Ms. Welsh doesn't get many visitors, she comments. I'm glad you could bring her some company. When did her last visitor come? Marcus asks casually. The nurse frowns slightly. That's odd. According to our log, you're her first visitors in over 3 months. Eleanor and Marcus exchange alarmed glances. The woman who visited yesterday? Dark hair, high-collared dress? No one visited Ms. Welsh yesterday, the nurse says with certainty. I've been on shift since Monday morning. No one has been to see her until you arrived today. The drive back to Blackwood passes in tense silence, both Eleanor and Marcus lost in their own thoughts. Catherine's warning echoes in Eleanor's mind, competing with her academic skepticism. Part of her wants to dismiss the entire story as the confused ramblings of an elderly woman whose memories have been distorted by time and childhood trauma. But the email, sent from her own account while her phone sat untouched in her bag, defies rational explanation. What are we going to do? Eleanor finally asks as they approach the town limits of Blackwood. The sun is setting, casting long shadows across the road. I'm not sure, Marcus admits. On one hand, the rational part of me wants to document everything. Preserve the photograph, record Catherine's testimony, publish our findings. And the irrational part wants to do exactly what Catherine suggested, destroy every copy and pretend we never found it. They arrive back in Blackwood after dark, the small town unusually quiet even for a weeknight. The streetlights cast pools of yellowed light on empty sidewalks, and an unseasonable fog has settled over the town, muffling sounds and limiting visibility. You should stay at a hotel tonight, Marcus suggests as he pulls up in front of the Historical Society. I don't think you should be alone in your house. Eleanor nods absently, her attention caught by something unusual. The lights are on in the archive room. Did you leave them on this morning? No. And Mrs. Jenkins is very strict about electricity usage. She always makes sure everything is turned off before leaving. They sit in silence for a moment, staring at the illuminated window on the second floor of the otherwise dark building. We should call the police, Marcus says finally. And tell them what? That we're worried about a ghost from 1920 stealing a photograph? Eleanor unbuckles her seatbelt. I'm going in. I need to make sure the original photograph is secure. Despite Marcus's protests, Eleanor approaches the building, key in hand. The heavy wooden door creaks as she pushes it open, revealing the familiar entrance hall now shrouded in darkness. The only light comes from upstairs, spilling down the staircase in a pale yellow wash. Marcus follows close behind her, using his phone's flashlight to illuminate their path. "This is how every horror movie begins, you know," he mutters. They ascend the stairs slowly, the old wood groaning beneath their weight. The door to the archive room stands slightly ajar, a thin line of light escaping through the gap. Eleanor pauses outside, listening. From within comes the faint sound of movement, papers being shifted, drawers opening and closing. Taking a deep breath, she pushes the door open. The archive room appears empty at first glance, though signs of disturbance are evident. Drawers have been pulled out, their contents examined. On Eleanor's desk, various photographs from the Blackwood school collection are spread out, as if someone has been searching through them. "Hello?" Eleanor calls out, her voice sounding thin in the quiet room. No response comes, but as they step further into the room, both Eleanor and Marcus notice the temperature has dropped significantly. Their breath forms small clouds in the chilled air. The drawer where Eleanor had stored the original photograph stands open, empty. "It's gone," she whispers, a knot forming in her stomach. As the words leave her mouth, the lights flicker once, twice, and then stabilize. In that brief moment of darkness and renewal, Eleanor catches a glimpse of movement near the far corner of the room, a tall, slender figure that vanishes when the lights return fully. "We need to leave. Now." Marcus grabs Eleanor's arm, pulling her toward the door. They hurry down the stairs and out of the building, not stopping until they reach Marcus's car. Only then does Eleanor realize she's shaking. Whether from cold or fear, she isn't sure. "The hotel idea sounds good," she manages, her voice unsteady. "And tomorrow, we need to delete every digital copy of that photograph." Marcus nods, starting the car with trembling hands. "I'll call the university's IT department first thing in the morning to wipe the copies from the server." As they pull away from the Historical Society, Eleanor glances back at the building. For just a moment, she thinks she sees a face in the archive room window, not the severe countenance of Abigail Blackwood, but the pale visage of a child, watching them with hollow eyes. Later that night, in a modest hotel room on the outskirts of Blackwood, Eleanor sits on the edge of the bed, laptop open before her. She's systematically deleting every trace of the photograph from her devices and cloud storage. Marcus has done the same and confirmed the university copies have been erased as well. "This feels ridiculous," she mutters to herself. "I'm a historian, destroying historical evidence because of a ghost story." Yet her hands continue the work, methodically removing every copy, every enhancement, every note related to the Blackwood school photograph. Something deep within her, beyond rational thought, urges her to complete this task, a primal instinct for self-preservation that overrides her academic training. As she's about to close her laptop, a final email arrives. The sender is listed simply as AB. The subject line reads, "You cannot erase us." Against her better judgment, Eleanor opens it. There's no text, just an attachment, a photograph. Not the 1920 class picture she's been studying, but a new one, taken earlier that very day. It shows the Sunset Meadows nursing home, specifically Catherine Wells's room. The elderly woman sits in her wheelchair by the window, just as they had left her. But she's not alone. Standing behind her, hands resting possessively on Catherine's shoulders, is a woman in a high-collared dark dress. Her face partially obscured by shadow, but her identity unmistakable. Abigail Blackwood, looking exactly as she did in 1920, and reflected in the window glass, barely visible unless one knows to look for it, are the faint outlines of children, 24 of them, standing in perfect rows. With a strangled cry, Eleanor slams her laptop shut. Her phone rings immediately. It's Marcus. "Eleanor, Catherine Wells was found dead 15 minutes ago. The nursing staff say it appears she simply stopped. No struggle, no medical emergency. They said it was as if her body just decided it was time." His voice drops lower. They also mentioned something strange. Apparently she wasn't alone when they found her. A young woman was seen leaving her room, described as old-fashioned looking with dark hair and a tight bun. Eleanor can barely breathe. "Marcus, we need to leave town. Tonight. I'm already packing. I'll pick you up in 20 minutes. As Eleanor gathers her few belongings, her phone chimes with a text message. Unknown number. The message contains just 5 words. The class is almost complete. Eleanor doesn't wait for Marcus. Grabbing only her purse and car keys, she rushes from the hotel room, taking the stairs rather than waiting for the elevator. The hotel lobby is deserted except for a night clerk who barely glances up as she hurries past. Outside, the fog has thickened, reducing visibility to mere feet. Eleanor fumbles with her car keys, dropping them twice before managing to unlock the door. As she slides into the driver's seat, she glances at the rearview mirror and freezes. A child sits in the back seat, a boy of perhaps 8 years old wearing clothing from the 1920s. His face is mostly in shadow, but she can see his smile, too wide, too knowing for a child. "Hello, Dr. Hayes," the boy says, his voice eerily adult despite his childish appearance. "Mother is very excited to meet you. She says you have a strong essence, perfect for completing me." Eleanor's scream is cut short as the car doors lock themselves with an audible click. The interior lights dim, then extinguish entirely, leaving her in darkness with only the faint outline of the child visible in the rearview mirror. "Don't worry," the boy continues conversationally. "It doesn't hurt." The others barely noticed as they faded. Just a gentle letting go, like falling asleep. "Mother says you'll hardly feel it at all." Eleanor fumbles desperately for her phone, but her hands refuse to obey her commands. A strange numbness spreads through her limbs, accompanied by a sensation of something else taking control. Something cold and ancient that pushes against her consciousness from within. "There's no point in fighting," the boy says, his voice now directly beside her ear, though she hadn't seen him move. "They all fight at first. Even Catherine fought, protected by that silly trinket. But Mother found a way around that eventually. She always finds a way." Through the windshield, Eleanor sees Marcus exit the hotel, looking around frantically for her. She tries to honk the horn, to flash the headlights, anything to catch his attention, but her body no longer responds to her commands. Instead, her hand turns the key in the ignition, and the car purrs to life. Without her control, her foot presses the accelerator, and the vehicle pulls away from the curb, disappearing into the fog just as Marcus turns in her direction. "We're going home," the boy informs her cheerfully. "To the schoolhouse. The others are waiting. It's almost time for class to begin." In the distance, Eleanor can make out the silhouette of the old Blackwood schoolhouse, a building she knows was demolished years ago. Yet there it stands, lights glowing warmly in its windows, beckoning her forward. As the car approaches, the front door of the schoolhouse opens, spilling golden light onto the misty ground. A slender figure stands in the doorway, a woman in a high-collared dress, her severe bun and rigid posture immediately recognizable. "Welcome, Eleanor," Abigail Blackwood calls, her voice carrying clearly despite the distance. "We've been waiting for you to join our class." Behind her, Eleanor can see rows of children seated at antique desks, their faces pale and expressionless, eyes dark and empty. They turn in unison to watch as Eleanor's car stops before the building. "Your seat is ready," Abigail continues, gesturing to an empty desk in the back row, right beside Dr. Thompson, who arrived just moments ago. With horror, Eleanor sees Marcus seated at one of the desks. His expression is vacant as the children's, his modern clothing the only indication that he doesn't belong to 1920. "The class is finally complete," Abigail says with satisfaction. "After all these years, Henry will be whole again." As Eleanor's body moves without her control, exiting the car and walking stiffly toward the schoolhouse, she feels her sense of self beginning to fragment. Memories slip away like water through cupped hands. Her childhood, her education, her career, all dissolving as something else takes their place. "Smile for the camera, Eleanor," Abigail instructs, raising an antique camera on a tripod. "This will be our class photograph, a record for posterity." 3 days later, Dr. Marcus Thompson's vehicle is discovered abandoned on a rural road 50 miles from Blackwood. There is no sign of either Marcus or Eleanor. Local authorities conduct a brief investigation, but with no evidence of foul play, and both individuals being adults who seemingly left of their own accord, the case is given low priority. The university where Marcus taught sends a representative to collect his personal effects from his office. Among the items is a sealed envelope addressed to his department chair with instructions to open it only if Marcus went missing. The envelope contains a USB drive and a handwritten note explaining their discovery of the Blackwood school photograph and its disturbing implications. The note concludes with a warning. "If you are reading this, we have likely become part of the collection. Do not look for us. Do not attempt to find the photograph. Destroy this USB drive without viewing its contents." The department chair, a practical woman with little patience for the supernatural, dismisses the note as some kind of elaborate prank or possibly the result of a mental breakdown. She plugs the USB drive into her computer, curious about what could have led two respected academics to disappear so suddenly. The drive contains a single file, a photograph of a classroom from the 1920s, with 26 children seated in perfect rows, their expressions unnaturally solemn, eyes dark and empty. Behind them stands a tall woman in a high-collared dress, her severe expression and rigid posture conveying strict authority. The department chair studies the image, not immediately understanding its significance. It seems like an ordinary class photograph from the early 20th century, though something about the children's expressions is vaguely unsettling. She's about to dismiss it entirely when she notices two adults seated among the children in the back row, a man and a woman in modern clothing, their faces bearing the same empty expression as the children surrounding them. With a start, she recognizes Marcus Thompson and a woman who must be Dr. Eleanor Hayes. As she stares in disbelief, she doesn't notice how the image on her screen subtly shifts, how the ghostly outline of a 27th figure begins to form in an empty chair, or how the eyes of the severe teacher seem to fix directly on her through the screen. She doesn't notice at first the email notification that appears in the corner of her screen, a message from an unknown sender with the subject line, "Your invitation to join our class." In the Blackwood Historical Society, a new photograph appears in the archive, though no one remembers how it got there or who might have donated it. It shows a class of 27 students and adults seated in perfect rows, their expressions solemn, eyes dark and empty. Behind them stands a tall woman in a high-collared dress, her severe bun and rigid posture immediately recognizable to anyone familiar with early 20th century class photographs. A small notation on the back reads simply, "Miss Abigail Blackwood's complete class, 1920-2023. The photograph sits in the archives, waiting for the next curious researcher to discover it. To look closely at the three adults seated in the back row among the children, a man and two women, their faces bearing the same empty expression as the children surrounding them, their modern clothing the only indication that they don't belong to 1920. And in the glass of the schoolroom window, visible only when the light catches it just right, another face appears to be watching. A 28th student perhaps, waiting for the class to grow even larger. In 2023, a junior archivist at the Blackwood Historical Society comes across this strange photograph while digitizing their collection. Puzzled by the mix of period and modern elements, she posts it online, asking for expert opinions on this curious photographic anomaly. The post quickly gains attention, especially after users enhance the image and discover more unsettling details, like how the faces of the three modern adults seem to be gradually fading with each viewing, while the face in the window grows clearer. As interest in the photograph spreads across the internet, more people examine it closely, zooming in, enhancing, discovering its secrets. And with each new viewer, each new person who stares into those empty eyes, the class photograph from 1920 travels further, touches more lives. In homes across the country, computer screens glow late into the night as people study the viral image, unaware that something studies them in return, something that has been collecting souls for over a century, patiently assembling a class that will never be dismissed. Social media influencers create videos analyzing the creepy vintage photo, digital artists create enhanced versions highlighting the anomalies, and amateur historians debate the identities of the modern figures seated among the children. With each share, each repost, each new examination, the photograph's influence spreads like ripples in a pond. Strange reports begin to emerge from those who have spent significant time studying the image. A college student in Oregon claims to have seen the children from the photograph standing at the foot of her bed. A photographer in Texas reports that his own reflection in mirrors and windows sometimes appears to be wearing early 20th century clothing. A digital archivist in Maine disappears after telling colleagues that a woman in an old-fashioned dress had been following her for days. The photograph is eventually flagged and removed from major platforms due to unexplained technical issues associated with the file. Devices crashing, data becoming corrupted, other images in the same storage locations developing strange anomalies. But by then, countless copies exist, shared through private messages, stored on personal devices, printed out for closer examination. And somewhere, in a schoolroom that exists in the space between moments, Miss Abigail Blackwood takes attendance, smiling as new names are added to her register day by day, photograph by photograph, viewer by viewer. The class grows, each new addition bringing Henry, the 25th child, the boy who died, closer to complete restoration. "Pay attention, class," she says, her voice carrying the authority of a century of teaching. "Today, we're going to learn about permanence, about living forever through the images that capture us." The students stare ahead with vacant eyes, no longer individuals but vessels for something else, something ancient and patient that has found a way to reach through time itself, frame by frame, pixel by pixel. In homes and offices around the world, curious viewers continue to discover the viral photograph, zooming in on the strange figures, wondering about the story behind the image. They study the children's faces, the teacher's severe expression, the modern adults seated among historical students. They do not notice at first how their reflections in darkened screens begin to shift and change. They do not feel the subtle pull as fragments of themselves are drawn into the photograph with each viewing, with each moment of connection to those empty, waiting eyes. They do not realize they are being invited to join the class, a class that grows larger with each passing day, a class that will continue its silent lesson for eternity, preserved forever in silver nitrate and digital code, in the space between reality and nightmare, between past and present, a class that is always looking for new students, a class that is looking perhaps for you.